Stop!
Huh?
Where are you going?
Home. I live off campus.
You don't belong here.
I'm a PhD student. My ID is in my wallet.
Don't reach.
The campus was quiet in the way only a university at night can be. Not empty, just hushed. Street lamps cast pale circles on brick paths. Sprinklers clicked on somewhere near the quad. A distant ventilation fan hummed like the school itself was breathing. Malcolm Okoye walked with a laptop bag on one shoulder and a stack of journal articles pressed to his chest, his breath visible in the cold. He'd been in the lab since noon. He'd missed dinner. He'd forgotten the time. That happens when your whole life is a problem you're trying to solve. And then the campus patrol car rolled up beside him and ruined the quiet. Window down, flashlight already in hand. Officer Dean Rask leaned out like he owned the sidewalk. "Hey," Rask called. "Stop right there." Malcolm slowed. "Yes?" Rask's eyes moved over him, hoodie, bag, dark skin, like he was scanning for permission. "Where are you going?" "Home," Malcolm answered, polite, controlled. "I live off campus." Rask's jaw tightened. "You don't belong here," he said. The sentence landed with the quiet violence of certainty. Not a question, not a request for verification, a verdict. Malcolm blinked once. "Officer," he said carefully, "I'm a PhD student. I work here." Rask scoffed. "Uh-huh," he replied. "Show me proof." Malcolm nodded. "My student ID is in my wallet," he said. "I can—" "Don't reach," Rask snapped, and with that, the encounter fell into a familiar trap. Demand proof. Forbid the movement that provides proof. Then label the pause suspicious. The body camera on Rask's chest blinked red. A blue emergency pole camera near the library entrance captured the angle, and a student across the path lifted a phone. Because in the months that followed, the University of North Valley didn't pay $1.6 million because a cop asked for ID. It paid because the footage showed harassment. It paid because you don't. Belong wasn't a safety check. It was a pattern, and once a pattern is recorded, institutions stop arguing about feelings. They start calculating risk, rewind, to who Malcolm Okoye actually was. Malcolm didn't stumble into a PhD program. He earned it. Every tedious application, every recommendation letter, every sleepless night studying while friends built lives outside academia. He was 28, born in the U.S. to immigrant parents who treated education like the only reliable currency. His mother worked as a nurse. His father repaired elevators and came home with grease under his nails and pride in his posture. They didn't give Malcolm a shortcut. They gave him expectation, work, discipline, no excuses. Malcolm carried that into engineering, materials science specifically, where he studied how microscopic structures affect real-world performance. If you want a simple translation, he worked on the kind of research that eventually becomes better. Batteries, better medical devices, better infrastructure. His lab was in the Applied Sciences building. 4th floor, keycard access, whiteboards full of equations, a coffee machine that never worked right. His advisor trusted him with expensive equipment because Malcolm was careful, because he documented, because he didn't improvise where precision mattered. On campus, Malcolm belonged everywhere. Library, lab, graduate lounge, conference rooms. He had a key card, a parking permit, a university email address. His name was on the research roster. But belonging, in the real world, isn't always determined by facts. Sometimes it's determined by who expects to see you. And that's where this story begins. University of North Valley was proud of its image. Beautiful campus, historic brick buildings, tour guides leading families past the fountain. A polished brand, safe, inclusive, world-class. But campuses are also political. board meetings, donor, pressure, parents emailing about security concerns, and in the year before Malcolm's incident, the university had tightened patrols. A few thefts, a few late-night fights, a viral rumor about outsiders wandering in from the nearby neighborhood. The administration responded the way institutions often do. More patrol cars, more stops, more contacts. They called it prevention. But prevention without guardrails becomes profiling. Officer Dean Rask had been hired into campus police less than a year earlier. He wasn't a veteran officer. He was new enough to still enjoy the authority. He took the job because it sounded calmer than city patrol. Safer, predictable. But he also carried a certain mindset. Campus is a bubble. Outsiders are threats. And when you believe that, you stop seeing students. You start seeing categories. The night Malcolm got stopped, the campus had emptied out after a basketball game. Crowds had dispersed. Trash had been collected. The air was colder now. Malcolm left the lab at 11:08 p.m. He was tired. He walked across the quad toward the library, cut through because it was the fastest route to the bus stop. His mind was still in his research. He was thinking about a data inconsistency, a result that didn't match the model. He wasn't thinking about being questioned, because he'd been on this campus long enough to think foolishly that belonging would be obvious. Rask spotted him near the library steps. In Rask's report later, he would say Malcolm was loitering, but the cameras would show Malcolm walking. In Rask's report, he would say Malcolm looked nervous, but the footage would show Malcolm calm. In Rask's report, he would say Malcolm refused to comply, but the audio would show Malcolm trying to comply safely, because reports are stories, and stories are easier to write than truth, unless you have video. When Rask told Malcolm he didn't belong, Malcolm didn't yell, he didn't curse. He did what educated people often do when they believe facts will help. He explained. "I'm a doctoral student," Malcolm said. "My lab is in applied sciences." Rask's flashlight angled up. He shined it into Malcolm's face, not for visibility, to disrupt. "You got a badge?" Rask asked. "It's a student ID," Malcolm replied. "In my wallet." "Don't reach," Rask snapped. Malcolm froze. "Okay," he said evenly. "How would you like me to show it?" Rask stepped out of the patrol car. That made the encounter physical. He closed the distance. "Hands where I can see them," he ordered. Malcolm lifted his hands slightly. Rask's eyes flicked to the laptop bag. "What's in the bag?" "My laptop," Malcolm said. "Research papers." Rask scoffed. "Open it," he demanded. Malcolm stared. "Officer," he said carefully, "am I being detained?" Rask's jaw tightened. "You're being investigated," he replied. "Investigated for walking." Malcolm took a slow breath. "What's the suspicion?" he asked. Rask's voice sharpened. "Suspicion is you don't belong here," he said. There it was again. Not behavior, not law, belonging. A student crossing the path slowed, phone already out. Malcolm noticed. He made the same decision people make when they realize the official story might not match what happened. He spoke to the record. "For the record," Malcolm said calmly, "I am Malcolm Okoye. I am a PhD student at this university. I am walking to the bus stop. I have offered to show ID. You told me not to reach." Rask flinched. "Stop talking like that," he snapped. Malcolm didn't raise his voice. "I'm stating facts," he replied. Rask's hand drifted toward his cuffs. "Turn around," he ordered. Malcolm's stomach dropped. "Why?" he asked. "Because you're not cooperating," Rask said. Malcolm's voice stayed steady. "I am cooperating," he replied. "You are preventing verification." That sentence hit Rask like disrespect. because some officers hear correction as defiance. Rask grabbed Malcolm's bag strap, not violently, but assertively, a physical claim. "Drop the bag," he said. Malcolm obeyed, slow. He placed it on the ground. Rask kicked it slightly with his boot. Then he said, "Now ID." Malcolm lifted his hands. "Officer," he said, "I'm going to reach with 2 fingers, slowly." Rask didn't answer. Malcolm reached, pulled out his wallet, displayed the student ID. It had his photo, his name, his university logo, his program. Rask stared at it. Then he did something that made every later deposition brutal. He didn't accept it. "This could be fake," he said. Malcolm blinked. "Fake?" Rask's voice went colder. "You people print all kinds of stuff," he said. The student filming across the Yavar path sucked in a breath. Malcolm's jaw tightened, but he stayed controlled. "Officer," he said, "scan it. Call dispatch. Call campus. Verify." Rask's eyes narrowed. "Now you're telling me how to do my job," he snapped. And that's where the encounter stopped being about verification. It became about ego. Because ego hates being reminded that procedures exist. Rask called for backup. He kept Malcolm on the sidewalk, under a streetlight, like a display. Students passed and stared. A couple slowed. One whispered, "Is that a student?" The word student floated in the air like a lifeline. Rask ignored it. He asked Malcolm where he was really from. He asked what building he worked in. He asked why he was out this late. Malcolm answered every question, and every answer was treated like suspicion. Because when someone has already decided you don't belong, information doesn't help. It just gives them more ways to doubt. Backup arrived. Officer Serena Whitfield. Older, calmer. She stepped out, looked at Malcolm's ID, and immediately said, "We can verify through the system." Rask's jaw tightened. Whitfield pulled out a small scanner. She scanned the card. Beep, valid. She looked at Malcolm. "Mr. Okoye," she said, "you're good." Just like that. One beep. The entire situation collapsed. Rask's face flushed. Malcolm exhaled, but relief doesn't erase humiliation, because now a dozen people had watched him get told he didn't belong. Now his campus, his workplace, felt conditional. Rask didn't apologize. He said, "Try not to be out here late." Malcolm stared. "Late," he repeated, "on a campus where graduate students work nights?" Rask's eyes narrowed. "Just advice," he said. Advice, like the burden was on Malcolm to shrink. Malcolm picked up his bag, he walked to the bus stop, and he felt every set of eyes on his back. The next morning, Malcolm's advisor emailed him. "Are you okay?" Malcolm blinked at the screen. How did she know? Because a student had posted the video. Not with a rant, with a caption, "Campus police telling a PhD student he doesn't belong." The clip spread. Faculty saw it. Students saw it. Alumni saw it. And the university, an institution that cares deeply about optics, felt the ground shift. The university's initial response was predictable. They called it an unfortunate misunderstanding. They promised review. They said they valued inclusion. Malcolm's attorney, because yes, Malcolm hired one, asked for records. Body cam, dispatch logs, training history, stop data, complaint files. Because the clip wasn't the whole story. The whole story was the pattern. Here's the twist that turned the university from defensive to terrified. Stop data. When the attorney reviewed Rask's stop history, a pattern appeared. Late-night contacts with blacks, students. Multiple stops clustered near the bus routes from the nearby neighborhood. Repeated use of words like out of place and doesn't belong. Not always recorded by bystanders, not always complained about, but present. And then there was one prior incident. A graduate student in a lab coat detained near the chemistry building. No arrest, no discipline. just a complaint closed as unfounded, until Malcolm's video made it harder to ignore. Depositions made it worse. Rask was asked why he didn't scan Malcolm's ID immediately. He said he didn't trust it. He was asked what behavior was suspicious. He described nervousness. He was asked why he used the phrase, "You don't belong." He said he meant after-hours restrictions. The attorney then played the body cam. The campus had no after-hours restriction for that walkway. The university itself confirmed it. So the phrase wasn't policy, it was perception. And perception is not reasonable suspicion. The university's lawyers did the math. A jury, a PhD student, a university brand built on inclusion, a campus cop saying, "You people," on camera, a second officer resolving it with one scan, stop data suggesting a pattern, faculty ready to testify, students ready to protest. They didn't want a trial, not with cameras, not with numbers, not with reputational risk that could cost more than money. So the university moved towards settlement, quietly, behind closed doors. $1.6 million, no admission, the standard language. But the conditions mattered. Policy changes restricting investigatory stops based on subjective belonging claims. Mandatory ID scan procedures before any detention of students. Training on bias and constitutional limits. Independent oversight of campus police stops. A new complaint process that didn't require students to risk retaliation. And an internal personnel action against Officer Rask, reassignment, discipline, and ultimately removal from patrol duties. The university didn't call it what it was, but the record did. Malcolm kept his program. He kept his lab. He kept working, because quitting would have been the quiet victory of the phrase, "You don't belong." But he changed, not into paranoia, into strategy. He started walking with friends after late lab nights. He kept his student ID accessible. He learned where the emergency poll cameras were. He started teaching younger students a lesson he shouldn't have to teach, that your credentials can be real and still treated as negotiable. So you document, you stay calm, you insist on verification. Near the end of all this, a faculty member asked Malcolm what hurt the most. Malcolm didn't say the flashlight, he didn't say the crowd, he didn't even say the word fake. He said, "The worst part was realizing the campus I work for didn't feel like mine until a scanner beeped." That beep, a sound so small, a verification so simple, and yet it had been withheld, not because verification was hard, because belief was. And that's the lesson behind the $1.6 million. Belonging should never be an officer's opinion. It should be a fact, verified, recorded, respected, because a university is supposed to be a place where knowledge matters more than assumptions. On that cold night under a streetlight, one officer tried to turn a PhD student into an outsider. The cameras said no, the data said no, the settlement check said no, and the university learned, expensively, that "you don't belong" is not security. It's bias wearing a badge.